Hey everyone, this is TierOne with a Vantage Point, here to give you a review of Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, the sequel to Lucasart's highly popular 2008 game, Star Wars The Force Unleashed. I know I'm not alone when I say I've been looking forward to this one for a long time now, so let's see if it's actually lived up to the hype. One of the great things about the first Force Unleashed was that it had a really rich and deep story. As a self-professed Star Wars nerd, I can tell you personally that it really hit the spot. TFU 2 takes place about 7 months after the events of that game, still in between the gap between Episode 3 and Episode 4, and again deals with Darth Vader's secret apprentice, otherwise known as Starkiller. At the beginning of this game, we find out that for the past several months, Darth Vader has been trying to make a perfect clone of Starkiller, despite his apparent death at the ending of last game. All hell breaks loose though when one of the clones escapes from the cloning facility on Kamino. The player then gains control of this clone as he embarks on a journey across the galaxy to answer many questions and to ultimately reunite with his love interest from the last game, Juno Eclipse. As I said before, one of the great things that I liked about the original Force Unleashed was its story, and I looked for something akin to that here, however it's just not to be found. To begin with, the game is extremely short, and when I say that, I mean I got through this game in about 3 hours. It's by far one of the shortest games I have ever played. Secondly, LucasArts advertised the hell out of the appearances of both Boba Fett and Yoda in the game, and in total they're in it for about 2 minutes, and in Yoda's case he's in it in a really unimportant role. The story itself is really lackluster and has a lot of plot holes and unexplained details. Unfortunately, it just feels as if LucasArts had sat down 20 minutes before launch day and said, oh yeah, hey, we have to write a story for this game. If they had actually just taken the time to sit down and write a good story for the game, it could have been a much better sequel. TFU 2's story is by far the biggest disappointment of the game for me. It just feels as if it was rushed and put together on the fly, with no attention to detail. Overall, the story gets 5.0. The Force Unleashed 2 plays very similarly to the first game. One of the biggest differences that you'll find with the gameplay in the second game is that you have 2 lightsabers instead of 1, so that opens up a few more interesting combos. Also, right from the get-go, you have all the powers that you need. Unlike the last game where you had to train everything and buy those point things to get the combos. In this game, you are a full-fledged Jedi right from the beginning. Using all the Force powers and combos that are given to you really do make you feel epic and badass, but the destructive powers of Starkiller ultimately throw off the Star Wars continuum of who the great Jedi are, because he really is better than any other Jedi ever. At least, the game makes it seem that way. To go on further about the Force power, specifically Force Choke, the targeting system in this game is much improved from the last one. It is much easier to throw someone the way you want to, or throw objects into people or whatnot. The enemies that you'll find in TFU 2 are fairly varied, but they're really nothing to write home about. The biggest problem of the game's gameplay is that it's extremely repetitive, meaning that you'll run into a room, kill a group of enemies, run down the hall, kill another group of enemies, and you'll do that until you get to a boss, and then you'll perform a combination of mouse clicks and hitting keys on the keyboard, and you'll beat the level. That's essentially the entire game, and it really does get boring by the game's end. TFU 2's gameplay is a slight improvement over the last game, and it will feel very similar to those who have played the last one. Ultimately, however, its extreme repetitiveness drags it down. Overall, the gameplay gets 7.0. In the graphical department, TFU 2 looks pretty good for the most part. The environments and character models look pretty nice, and most of the combat animations are fairly smooth and good looking. The real highlight of the graphics, however, are the CGI cutscenes. While there are few in this game as compared to the original, the incredible realism and lifelike animations in them are really something to behold. All that being said, however, there are still some serious problems with the graphics. While I was playing, I noticed numerous graphical slowdowns that really should not have been there at all. The slowdowns really increased as the game went on, and by the final battle, the rendered cutscenes began to lag so badly that I just had to skip a lot of them.
Where is she?
While TFU 2 does look pretty nice overall, the laziness of LucasArts to smooth out bugs in their engine is extremely disappointing. Overall, TFU 2 gets 7.5 for its graphics.
I'm not him.
I may be blind, but I'm still connected to the Force.
TFU2 sees the return of many of the voice actors from the original game to reprise their roles. As with the original Force Unleashed, most of the actors do a great job with their characters. In particular, however, I really enjoyed Sam Witwer's performance as Starkiller. It seems like he really loves playing the characters. He puts a hell of a lot of effort into his voice. It's extremely hard to find a Star Wars product that doesn't have good music, and this game is no exception. Drawing on the scores of both the original trilogy and prequels, while at the same time adding its own little twists, TFU2 has a great selection of music. Overall, TFU2 gets 8.0 for its audio. With The Force Unleashed 2, there really isn't a lot of reason to go through the game more than once. In a similar vein to the last game, there are various goodies sprawled throughout the levels that unlock things like different color saber crystals and different costumes, but there's really no more than that. On that note, TFU2 gets 4.0 for a replay value. The Force Unleashed 2 is one of those games that leaves you feeling completely ripped off after you finish playing it. The game had so much potential, and other than for looking nice and having good sounds, there's really not a whole lot here. It's incredibly easy to see that this sequel was simply rushed through production by Lucasart in order to benefit from the success of the last game. Great examples of this are the completely lackluster attempt at the story, as well as numerous bugs that were not smoothed out in testing. As a result, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2 gets 6 out of 10. If you just want to turn off your brain for a few hours, then by all means play this game, but if you're looking for something more interesting, that would be a very good idea to look elsewhere. This has been TierOne with a Vantage Point, and I'll see you next time.